Good morning, everyone. Today we're going to be going through more of our beginner series for kind of getting started with movement. I like to revisit this class every once in a while just to kind of go through it, see if I get better at teaching it, and having a new, fresh model of the class that's up on YouTube. So this is for anybody who's kind of brand new to movement, wanting to get back into movement, dealing with pain and injury, and trying to navigate how to move in some fashion without making the injury worse. So this class is for that level of client. So with all that, let's get started. We're going to start in a standing position, going through our crocodile breathing or balloon breathing. So this is breathing practice to work on developing and expanding a balance of breath through our breathing apparatus. We're focusing largely on the mid-core area. We're going to start by making two big C shapes with our hands. The thumbs are going to be placed in at the low back. I want to press in so we can feel some low back musculature. Index fingers are pressing into the abdominals in the front. Again, I want to press in and feel some of that musculature of the abdominal wall. And then the palms are pressing into the side body. And we're going to slightly clench our hands in order to create resistance with our hands for the inhalation phase of our breath. When we inhale, I want to feel that breath expanding out in all directions. So I want to feel that breath moving into the thumbs in the low back. I want to feel it moving forward into the belly through the abdominals in the front and out through the side palms as well, all at the same time. We're going to inhale in through our nose and exhale out through our mouth. And when we exhale, I want to draw the belly up and in, like you're trying to pull your belly button into your spine to touch your spine. And as we, on our exhale, as we get that exhale, allow your hands to cinch in a little bit more to create greater resistance for your next inhale phase. And we'll do about 5 to 6 full breaths. So on that inhale, feel that expansion out and away. Exhale, full exhale. As you get to the end of that breath, allow the hands to cinch in and then work on building back up. See if you can blow that balloon up. With each inhale, see if you can get that expansion to go out a little wider. If you start to feel dizzy or you're lightheaded, I want you to go ahead and take a pause in the breath and sit down. It's not unusual to kind of get a little dizziness based on working our deep breath in and out, especially while we're standing. Once we get to the 5th or 6th breath, we can allow our hands to soften and relax. We're going to continue to work through this breath throughout the class. So I'm going to come back and remind, like we're trying to breathe in and expand through that abdominal wall. Exhale, drawing in that navel into the spine. Next, I want to do a little bit of foot mobility. We're going to start with what I call the 6 walks. 6 walks, we're going to start with an introduction to the 6 walks. There's 6 positions that we're going to work through our foot. The first one is loading of the big toe. We're going to step out a little bit from our midline of the body, and very quickly. We can use a staff or something to help balance a chair or a stool if balance is an issue. So stepping out and away from the midline of the body, we're going to load on the big toe joint only. I want the outside ball of the foot, pinky toe side, off the floor, and the heel is off the floor. And we're just going to lightly shift our weight onto the ball of the big toe and then shift our weight back to our other foot. I want to inhale as we shift, exhale as we shift back. And I want to think about the foot like it's a spring. As we load the ball of the big toe, I want to feel that load go into the arch of the foot, like you're loading that spring and then unloading that spring. And we'll do 5 to 10 reps on each foot. If this feels good and solid, we can start to release that foot from the floor, let it load and unload. Again, we'll do the same thing on the other side. Again, stepping away, loading just the ball of the big toe. The knee is going to slightly track internally, and then shifting the weight back. Inhale as we shift our weight on the foot. Exhale as we shift our weight back. If if it feels safe and comfortable, we can start to release that foot from the floor. And again, I want to feel that load of our weight load into the spring of the arch of the foot. Again, 5 to 10 reps, then we're going to switch back to the other foot. This step is we're going to come straight out in front, and we're going to turn the sole of our foot so the sole of our foot is facing towards the midline of our body. And we're going to load just on the outside ball of the foot, pinky toe side. Big toe side is off the floor now. Heel is still off the floor. Knee is going to lightly track out. We're going to start by shifting our weight onto that front foot lightly, and then shifting our weight back onto the back foot. And just like with the medial arch, loading through the big toe, I want to imagine that we're loading a spring. And as we place the ball of the foot, that load goes into the lateral arch of the foot. And I want to feel that load, and I want to release that load. And again, if this is feeling safe and comfortable, we can let that foot release from the floor, load on the inhale, exhale, unload. And again, same thing on the other side. Starting nice and soft, keeping the foot in contact, simple weight shift. Feel that load and unload, and then see if you can start to feel more of a spring at the level of the foot. Knees tracking out, load, and then unload. We'll then come back to the first foot again, stepping out away from the body, just like we started with. This is going to be very similar to that first one. We're going to start on just the ball of the big toe. So again, the outside ball of the foot is off the floor and the heel is off the floor. Knee is going to track internally. But as I load into the ball of the foot, I want to feel the spring get loaded, and then the heel is going to come in contact with the floor. Then we're going to release the heel, and then we're going to release the ball of the foot. Ball of the foot loads into the spring, allowing the heel to touch, then release the heel, release the ball. And again, I want to feel that spring-like action. As we load that ball of the foot, the knee's going to lightly track internally. Ball of the foot hits, heel releases, ball of the foot releases. See if you can start to feel that spring loading all the way to the heel and then releasing as we come off the floor. And then we'll do the same thing on the other side. I want to start easy on these as a simple weight shift, especially if this is the first time you're doing it. And then as you get comfortable with it, I want to make it a little bit more dynamic because I want to build the springs in our feet. We have natural springs within our body that help translate energy through our body so that we move efficiently. And when we lose those spring mechanisms, we lose efficiency, and every step we take is an impact that goes through the joints of our body. And if we don't have that good spring that translates that energy through, it gets leaked into our joints, and that creates inflammation and wear and tear and pain. All right, coming back to the first foot, step is going to come straight out in front, and we're going to turn the sole of the foot in line so that we roll to the outside edge of the foot. I want as much of the outside edge or outside blade of the foot in contact with the floor as possible. So this is almost like we're getting into an ankle sprain position. I want to be very cautious with this position and make sure that the ankle feels safe. Again, that's why we have a staff, in order to kind of make sure that we don't roll our ankle. Knee is going to slightly track out. We're going to lightly shift that weight onto that blade of the foot, making sure we don't put too much weight, and then shifting off of it, bringing that weight to the back foot again. Inhale as we shift forward, exhale as we shift back. And just like with the other positions, I want to think like a spring. As this starts to feel safe and comfortable, your ankle feels solid and secure, we can start to load that foot and then let it release from the floor. And again, I want to find that we're going from more weight shift into more of a dynamic movement as we get into it. The dynamic movement, if you have weak ankles, you're prone to ankle sprains, you're new, fresh off an ankle sprain, then I want to move through these really slowly. It might take days or weeks to get to where you're able to find that dynamic action. Stay easy and light to start with. Make sure that you're not moving into issues of pain. Switching to the opposite side, again, rolling that foot to the outside edge. Knee tracks out as we shift weight and then shift weight off. Moving that weight on and then slowly releasing. Again, if that feels solid, we can let that foot load and then release, and then we can start to work more into that dynamic quality of feel that spring and load and unload. As we come back to the first foot, we're now going to step out to the side again, slight out angle. We're loading onto the heel. And I want to load onto the outside edge of the heel, so the knee again is going to track out, foot is turned in a little bit. The heel is not a very good spring. It feels more like stepping onto a peg leg. We're still shifting weight forward and shifting weight off, but I still want to imagine that we're building that spring. So as we get comfortable with releasing that heel, it's still load the spring, unload the spring, and trying to find as much of that dynamic action as we can, obviously without going into pain in the foot or without the risk of rolling our ankle and making the ankle less stable. Switching to the other side, allowing that knee to track out, sole of the foot's turned into the midline of the body. Inhale as we load, exhale as we unload. And then the last for our 6 walks, I did that one backwards. So we're going to step out and away again, and I want to load more on the inside edge of the foot, and I want to turn the sole of the foot more away from the body. Knee is going to lightly track internally this time. And again, shift weight forward and then shifting weight back to start, keeping it at a light shift. If that feels safe and comfortable, we can start to release that heel from the floor. And again, I want to find that spring, as much of a springy action as possible. And then we'll switch to the other side and do the same thing. Again, knee tracks a little bit internally, landing more on the inside of the heel. Inhale as you load, exhale as you shift that weight back. And then we can get into load and release of the heel. As we progress these particular 6 walks, they get more complex and they literally turn into walking. We can walk on the ball of the big toe, walk on the outside edge, walk on the blade of the foot, walk on our heels. But we want to build up enough strength and stability of the ankle before we build up those progressions into harder and harder levels. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get down onto the floor into our quadruped. We want to spread fingers nice and wide, grounding palms and extending elbows fully. We're going to do some wrist mobility to start with here. I want to be very light on the wrist to make sure that there is not pain. I've actually been dealing with some wrist pain in my right wrist, so I'm going extra cautious on these. So with that nice spread hands, we're inhaling as our weight is shifted back, and then exhaling as we rock our weight forward and load into the wrist space. Inhale as we let it back, exhale as we shift forward. And I want to start small so that we can really feel the tension in the right wrist and compare it to the tension in the left wrist. Is one side stiffer, achier, less mobile? Is it more restricted? Is it painful? If it's painful, then I want to back off, making sure that we're not getting over a level 3 on a scale of 0 to 10 on the pain scale. After 5 to 10 soft, gentle reps, we're turning fingers out to the side, and we're doing a little bit of nice, easy side-to-side glide. Again, making sure that we're not pushing too far into that wrist and comparing that right wrist to the left wrist. I would say my right wrist is a level 1 discomfort, slight discomfort. It's not pain so much. I mean, it's on the pain scale, so it's yes on the pain, but it's not like a triggering level of pain. It's mildly uncomfortable, but it's distinctly different from the left side. And that difference is what is important to take notice of. Next, we're going to turn fingers all the way back towards the knees. The closer the hands are to the knees, the less intense. The further out we come, the more intense. I want to keep this light in intensity. I don't want to get big intensity on this. We're now inhaling as we go forward, and we're exhaling as we rock back towards our heels, but keeping the palms grounded and loaded to the floor. Again, inhale forward, exhale, softly rock back. I want to continue to kind of notice the difference between the right side and the left side. Although in this position, the dominant side arm is generally a little tighter and thicker and denser in feel. So that's not unusual. Next, we're going to flip our palms upside down to the back side. This position can be a little uncomfortable, especially if it's new, and the back of the wrist can feel a little sensitive. So I want to allow the elbows to bend a little bit so that we can kind of control how much weight we're putting on it. We're going to start by kind of focusing on those elbows. So I want to see, can we lightly press into the floor through the back of the hands and straighten the elbows? How straight can you get them? Do you feel a stretch? If you feel a stretch, that's exactly what we want to work with and play with. So I want to let the elbows soften on my inhale. Exhale, we're moving into that light stretch. Inhale, let it soften. Exhale, seeing if we can move a little further into that stretch without forcing it. If you're getting a good stretch, then just play in that area. Working on this a few times, a little bit every day, you'll start to get more and more extension out of the elbows. If you're able to get your elbows fully extended without stretch, without discomfort, then we can do a little bit of light rocking back hips to heels. But again, I want to make sure that we're staying soft on the wrist to make sure that we're not overloading the wrists. We can go ahead and bring the wrists off the floor, roll them out a little bit, get some flow back into them. We're going to spend a little bit more time in our quadruped, and then we'll get a little break from the wrist. So coming back to quad. Now I want to tuck the back toes. I want to make sure the big toe is tucked underneath as much as possible. And we're going to get back into our breath, coming back to that crocodile breath, breathing into our abdominal wall, feeling that abdominal wall expanding out in all directions like a balloon. And then on the exhale, drawing the navel into your spine. We'll get a good 2 to 3 breaths. And as you're getting these breaths in and out, notice the movement, the natural movement of your pelvis. On our inhale phase, it's going to draw the belly down to the floor a little bit. Feel that pelvis tilt down to where we get a little bit of a sway in our back. As we exhale, since we're drawing in the navel to the spine, we're going to get this natural scoop of the pelvis. I want to move into those positions a little bit. I want to be soft with it, but I want to focus just on the tilt of the pelvis. Inhale, let that pelvis tilt down towards the floor. We're getting a nice big sway in our back. I want to go as far as we can without pinch or pain. Exhale, drawing the navel in, we're scooping the tailbone. I'm not doing a big cat. I don't want this movement to go into my shoulders just yet. So I kind of want the shoulders to stay fixed, and we're only moving the pelvis, tilting of the pelvis. And we're seeing how far can we go in each direction. Can we get it to move a little bit more? How much sway in the back can we get on that inhale? On the exhale, how much scoop can we get? Do you start to feel that little stretch in the low back? As you exhale, and this is a nice little just simple low back mobilizer. Now that we got the pelvis moving a little bit more in our tilts, I want to start to get the rest of the spine following. So on the next inhale, as you breathe into the belly, big sway in the back. On the exhale, as you scoop, drawing the navel in, start to allow that movement to go up the rest of the spine. Continue to scoop. As you feel it move up into the shoulders, press into the floor through the hands. Feel some stretch in between the shoulder blades. Then allow that movement to go over the top of the head. And at this top point, imagine you're trying to touch your tailbone to your forehead at this imaginary point right in the middle. Then on the inhale, pelvis is tilting down to the floor. It's drawing the spine to the floor. We're letting it move up as it gets to the chest. The sternum reaches to the floor, and then the head comes up last. Exhale, navel comes to the spine. We're seeing if we can move our spine like a wave generated from the tailbone. The tailbone is the beginning of the wave. The head is the end of the wave. So I want to see if you can feel each segment, each vertebral segment, one at a time, from your pelvis, moving up your spine until it reaches to your head. And we're doing that in both directions. How smooth can you feel your spine translate through that wave? From inhale to exhale. And we can take a little break on the wrist again. We're now going to get into a version of child's pose. So I'm going to bring my hands forward. I want to extend arms pretty well forward. I want the hips to be as much over the knees as possible. Now, how far forward we go is going to depend a lot on core strength and shoulders. If you're dealing with shoulder pain or some kind of shoulder injury, then I want to stay back a little bit more so that we're putting less weight and pressure on the shoulders. But if the shoulders feel solid and healthy, I want the hips over the knees, and I want to extend those hands out as far as possible. Keep the hands spread wide and well grounded. I want to press down into the floor with the palms. I want the elbows extended actively. From this position, I want to come right back into our breath with our pelvic tilts. So breathing into the belly, get a big sway in the back. Exhale, draw the navel into the spine and scoop the pelvis. We'll do about 5 quick breaths. With each one, see if you can get a little bit more sway in the back on that inhale. Can you get a little bit more scoop on the exhale? And on the next inhale, as the belly opens up to the floor, as we exhale, drawing navel in and scooping, we're going to reach our chest down to the floor at the same time that we are actively scooping. Inhale, we're going to rock up, let the pelvis tilt to the floor. Exhale, navel to spine as we drop down. Now, what I'm trying to get on this is I want to have an active scoop as we're exposing our shoulders. I want to avoid dropping down and having that sway in the back so that our rib is sticking out at the bottom. I want to actively scoop the pelvis as we're dropping so that our rib cage and our pelvis and our core are engaged and tight, and that way we feel a little bit more of that stretch into the shoulders themselves. If we got a lot of sway in that back, you're not going to feel this in the shoulders as much. With each one, we're seeing if we can drop that chest a little lower while continuing to actively scoop the pelvis. Now start to notice, how does this feel on the right shoulder compared to the left shoulder? Is one side a little tighter, a little more restricted than the other side? Is it painful? Are you feeling any kind of clunkiness in the shoulder? We'll come out of that child's pose position, off our hands, let the shoulders relax a little bit, and we're going to change our position, getting into a nice wide V-sit. In the V-sit, I want to bring feet out as wide as possible. We're actively reaching the back of the knees downward to the floor. We're actively pulling the top of the foot back to towards the shin. The more actively we're moving the knees down to the floor, you should kind of naturally feel your quads or the front of your thighs tighten up. Our hands are going to come down to the floor behind our hips, grounding through our palms. I want to spiral the elbow pits out and away, turning those arms out so that we feel the chest open up, trying to lift our sternum up towards the ceiling. This position can be really hard to get into. You may find that you're a little rounded and sitting back. Eventually, we want to work to where we can get up onto our sits bones so that we're more sitting on top of our pelvis and not in this rolled back position. That can take a little bit of work. It might take some time. So get as close to this position as you can to start with. Again, palms are grounded, elbows spiraled out. Active knees reaching down, tops of the feet pulled back. We're going to focus on the knees. We're going to do some spirals through our hip. So I want to turn the kneecap as far out and away on both legs, seeing how far can I turn that knee as if I'm trying to push my kneecap to the floor. I'm going to inhale as I bring it back to the center, and then I'm going to see how far can I turn the knee internally, like I'm trying to bring it to the inside floor as I exhale. Inhale as we get the center. Exhale as we rotate away. Inhale to center and exhale as we rotate internally. Go slow on this so that you can really slowly engage, squeezing into the end range, making sure that it is not painful and that we're not forcing it. And as we're going back and forth through this, kind of take note of your kneecaps. How far does the right kneecap move compared to the left kneecap? Are you able to get them to go the same distance, or does one go farther than the other? Same thing on the internal. How far do they both go? Does one go farther than the other? Good. We're now going to slowly shift into a shin box position. I'm in my left side shin box. My left knee is forward. I'm going to bring my left hand down to ground onto the floor. And I want to, again, spiral that elbow out and away so that I feel my shoulder blade driving down my rib cage and the chest is kind of lifting up and opening up towards the ceiling. I want to really be solid and fixed through the upper body right now. I don't want to move my upper body. We're going to focus on the back hip to start with. Just doing some light lifting of the knee, opening it up like we're trying to lift it to the ceiling. And I want to stay small with this. We just did a little bit of internal and external rotation, but I want to make sure that this is not painful on the knee. So we're going to inhale as the knee is down, exhale as we lightly lift. Inhale as we let it back down. And with each lift, we're seeing if we can slowly lift it a little higher. Inhale, bringing it back down. And we're slowly seeing like, how much can I open up and squeeze without changing the position of my upper body? I don't want to turn my chest. I don't want to move a whole lot through this upper shoulder. I'm really isolating just the leg, that hip, and seeing how high can I get to by the 5th or 10th rep. Once we get to the 10, we're going to move both knees at the same time as we shift our weight to our other hand, coming all the way across to the opposite side shin box. Grounding that palm, spiraling that elbow out and away so that we feel the shoulder blade pack down and back, and lifting up through our sternum. Focusing on that back knee, nice slow lift as we exhale. Inhale as we bring it back to the floor. Again, with each one, we're seeing if we can go a little bit higher, making sure that we're not moving into pain. Noting how does it feel on this side compared to the other side. By the time we get to the 5th and 10th rep, are you able to go higher on this side? Did you have more range of motion on the other side? Does one side feel tighter and more restricted than the other side? Once we get to the last one, we're then going to, again, kind of windshield wiper both of our knees across to the other side. And we're still focusing on this back hip. So grounding palm, spiraled elbow, packed shoulder. Now, on our inhale, I want to focus more on the pelvis. I want to let that pelvis drop down like we're trying to touch the floor underneath our hip. If you're able to touch the floor, great. If you're not able to touch the floor, it's not a big deal. But I do want to see how close can we get to the floor. And on the exhale, we're going to scoop. We're drawing that navel in, we're scooping that tailbone forward and seeing how high can we lift and rotate that hip off the floor. How far forward can we get the hip bone to move? So I'm letting that hip drop down and touch the floor, and notice the position of the front of the hip. I am now flexed at the hip. I have a little bit of bend or crease here. As I exhale, I'm scooping forward. I'm seeing how far can I move my hip forward. I'm trying to get as extended in this hip as possible. And I want to see if we can feel a stretch in the light stretch or lengthening in the front of the hip. Can you feel this front of the hip getting longer? And then if you're able to get full extension where we get that hip straight, can you start to feel tightening in the rear? Can you feel your glute starting to contract? If you're able to feel that scoop of the pelvis, light stretch and contraction in the rear, that's where we want to play. The movement doesn't need to be more than that right now. If anything, I really want to squeeze that scoop as much as possible to get as much contraction in the glute in the rear. Again, after 5 to 10 reps, we're then going to windshield wiper across to the other side. Again, grounded palm, spiraled elbow, focusing on that back hip. Inhale, allow that hip to drop to the floor. Does it touch the floor the same way as the other hip does? Or does it go as close to the floor as the other hip? Is there a difference in how low this hip goes compared to the opposite side? Exhale, drawing navel into the spine as we scoop that tailbone forward, feeling into the front of the hip. My left hip is more restricted. I'm close to as far down on this one as the other one, which is actually an improvement for today. On the exhale, as I squeeze forward, I'm more restricted. I'm not quite getting as much range here. I can start to feel the glute contract, but it's not as much. So again, nice inhale and exhale, and with each one, I'm seeing if I can move a little bit closer to that full extension. Can I start to get more of that glute contraction? I'm trying to get as much balance between both sides as possible. Now that I'm getting into it, I'm getting a little bit more range. I'm starting to feel that glute contract, although it's still a little bit more restricted on this side than the other side. If you have one side that's tighter, more restricted than the other side, it's okay to go back and do these a couple times through so that you can get more reps and see if this area will mobilize a little bit more. We want to try to get as much balance in the hips as possible in our movement session, especially in our morning routine, because that balance is going to help carry us through our day. Switching back to the other side, grounded palm. We're doing the exact same movement. Inhale, letting that hip drop. Exhale, scooping forward. Feel that contraction in the glute. Once we have that contraction, we're adding another layer to it. I want to imagine we got a piece of bread in our hand, our free hand, and we have a buddy who's angled directly through our knee, and so we're going to reach that hand straight through the knee as we exhale. Inhale, we're bringing that hand all the way back, allowing that hip to come back to the floor. Exhale, scoop, engage the glute first, and then add the reach second. And with each reach, I want to get as much contraction in that glute first, and then I want to start to see how far can I reach my fingertips and extend towards that wall. I'm trying to get a stretch from pushing through this back knee, scooping the pelvis, engaging that glute, to how far can I get my fingertips from that knee. Notice, where do you feel this stretch? Do you feel it more through the front of the hip? Do you start to feel it more through the low back or into your obliques? And then we'll windshield wiper back across to the other side, and we're going to do the same thing. So again, grounded palm, spiraled elbow, packed shoulder. Inhale, hip goes down. Exhale, scoop, find that contraction, and then apply that reach. Now, again, I want to have a good sense of comparison. My left hip was tighter, just working this hip part, adding in the reach. This still feels tighter at the hip, and I feel more tightness and tension into the low back. I have a good amount of restriction on this side compared to the other side. So again, I want to work on this to try to get this a little bit more balanced with the other side so that I can move with a little bit more balance through the day. Again, if it's significantly tighter on one side compared to the other, go through each of these movements a second time, even a third time. You'll find that a few more reps going back and forth helps to get that, bring that balance back. I don't want to just focus on the side that's tight. I want to work evenly in both directions. It's working both directions that's going to bring that balance back. All right, switching back to the other side, grounded palm still. We're actually going to release that palm here in a second. We're going to get into some folds. So we're going to inhale, letting that back hip drop. We're still doing that first part. Exhale, scoop forward. And then from here, I want to imagine the shin. I want to keep chest square to the shin. So I want to reach both hands evenly through the shin. And I want to see how far can I reach both hands evenly. I don't want one hand going farther than the other. So I'm seeing how far will both of them go evenly on the exhale. Inhale, bringing it all the way back up, letting that back hip drop. Exhale, scoop that hip, feel that glute contract in the back, and then add in our reach. With each one, we're seeing if we can slowly start to drop our chest and reach a little bit further without forcing it. And kind of noticing, where do you feel restriction, tightness, stretch? Is it, might be in that back hip more, it might be in the back of the front hip. It could be in your low back. Once we've done 5 to 10, we're going to windshield wiper across to the other side and doing the exact same thing. Inhale, let that back hip drop. Exhale, scooping into it, feel the glute contract, then reaching both hands through the shin, keeping those hands even. Inhale, bringing it all the way back up, let that hip drop. Exhale, scoop. Find that contraction in the glute, and then add in our reach. Notice, how does it feel different on this side compared to the other side? Does it feel tight and restricted in the same places? Are you getting the same level of stretch, or is it different? Are you able to go as far? Once you've done the same number on this side as we did on the other side, we're going to go back across. And we're now going to go back and forth. I want to do one on each side, transitioning from one to the other. So nice inhale, feel that hip drop. Exhale, scoop, feel the glute contract. Nice forward fold. Inhale, bringing it all the way back up. We're going to add a breath cycle in and out as we transition so that we're ready at the end. Hips dropped on the inhale. Exhale, scoop into it and fold. And I want to go nice and slow from one side to the other. I want to feel, how does my fold feel on the left compared to the right? Is there differences? Is one side tighter and more restricted? I also want to pay attention to this transition. How do the hips feel as I slowly spiral my knees from one side to the other? Is it clunky? Is it hurt? Is there a little bit of discomfort moving in one direction compared to moving in the other direction? How smooth is that transition in both directions? I want to pay attention to the quality of the movement all the way through. Good. All right. So we're now going to change our position. We're going to get into an inverted sit. So knees are bent, feet are on the floor, Hands are going to be grounding behind the hips, at the hips or slightly behind the hips. From here, we're going to start with kind of elbow spirals going into an inverted cat-cow. So I want to pay attention to our elbows and our elbow pits. We're going to spiral the elbow pits out and away, turning them out like we're trying to spiral them behind us as far as they will go. And then we're going to turn them internally, let them spiral towards our midline as far as they will go. And as we're spiraling out and in, I want to start to notice the shoulders and the shoulder blades. As we spiral our elbow pits inward, the shoulder blades are going to run around up towards our ears to where we get more of a cat, like we're getting into a cat position in our upper back. And as we spiral the elbows out in a way, notice how the shoulder blades want to rotate downward on our rib cage, like they're moving towards our back pockets. That kind of help, we can add in a lift of the sternum and feel that stretch across the chest. We're going to exhale as we spiral the elbows internally, getting the rounding of the back. We're going to inhale as we spiral the elbow pits out and away, getting nice and tall. And since we're exhaling on our spiral in, I want to draw that navel in and start to add in that scoop of the pelvis. So as we're spiraling elbows in, shoulders are rounding up, moving up towards our ears. We're also scooping the pelvis so that maybe we get some stretch from the upper back down into the low back. And then on our inhale, spiraling out and away, feel the shoulders pack down and back. Can you feel some stretch across the chest? So I want to go from stretch on the chest to feeling stretch across the upper back down into the lower back. Again, inhale as we get tall. Exhale as we scoop and round. On the next inhale, as we get tall, I want to remain tall. So we're going to find this spiraled out position. Shoulders are packed, palms are grounded. At this point, we can bring our feet together and come into a cross sit. But again, I'm downwardly engaged through my palms, elbows are spiraled out, chest is lifted, and we're going to do some neck mobility. So I want to start by checking our blind spots. We're looking over our right shoulder, seeing how far can we turn our gaze. Exhale as you look over the shoulder. Inhale as you bring your head back to center. And then exhale as you turn over your left shoulder. Now, as I'm turning and seeing how far we can look, I want shoulders to be fixed and grounded. Our shoulders should not be rotating with our head. Head is moving independent. Shoulders should not be moving at all. And see, kind of notice, how does it feel looking over your right shoulder compared to looking over your left shoulder? Is one side tighter and more restricted? Are you able to go the same range of motion? Does one side go farther than the other? My right side feels a lot looser today than the left. Left, I have a little bit of tightness and restriction. I want to stay really soft and light with this. I don't want to force it, but I am squeezing into that end range ever so slightly to see if I can encourage a little bit more range of motion. But I want to make sure I'm not being forceful and I'm not moving into pain. Next movement, if you need to take a break on the wrist, you're welcome to, but we want to come back and ground them, spiral the elbows and pack the shoulders. Now we're going to get into a slight tilt and lift. So I want to slightly tilt the head like we're dropping an ear towards the shoulder. But this is a slight drop. I do not want to let my head reach all the way down. I'm just lightly tilting And from here, my opposite ear, I want to imagine I'm trying to lift it up towards the ceiling to touch the ceiling. Inhale, I'm bringing it back down, switching to the other side. Exhale as I lift. While we're lifting the ear, when I'm lifting my right ear, we can also slightly downwardly press through the right shoulder, pushing into that palm to create a little bit more traction in the neck. Inhale as we come to center, exhale as we go to the other side. Notice, how does this one feel on the right side compared to the left? Does one side feel tighter and more restricted? For this movement, my right side feels tighter. My left side feels less tight. So again, we want to pay attention to each range of motion and where you feel the tightness and restriction on each side. Because sometimes for certain movements it'll be on the right, and for other movements it'll be on the left. And it's kind of important to understand which movements are restricted and where they're restricted at, because that gives us a lot of detail and information about how your body's moving and things that we can work on to get it to move better. All right, so last movement we're going to get into is glide. So glide is a little bit challenging. I want to keep the cheekbones perfectly even. We're moving along just on a lateral plane, shoulder to shoulder. But I want to avoid the head turning or tilting in either one. So this is one that's a little bit easier to do in front of a mirror, so you can visibly see to make sure that you're not getting tilt or rotation. And keep the movement small. I want to try to do this one as perfectly as possible. So again, using a camera or a mirror is a really good, useful way of learning this movement. We're inhaling at center. We are exhaling as we let that head slide across towards the shoulder. Inhale as we come to center. Exhale as we slide to the other side. Now this one, again, there's going to be a difference in how the movement goes to the right compared to the left. So this is, again, a great movement to assess. Notice, where does it feel tight and restricted? I'm feeling more tightness and restriction on the right side as I move to the right than I do when I move to the left. Good. All right, so we're going to relax our shoulders. We're now going to get onto our back. Laying on back, we're going to bring our knees and our feet off the floor. I want to bring the knees in a little tight to the chest. I want to be less than 90 degrees at our hips. I don't want to, this is 90 degrees. I definitely don't want to be greater than 90 degrees. I want to be a little tight here so that we can feel our low back pressing against the floor. We're going to bring our arms out to the side with the palms up. And I want to feel as much of the floor underneath my shoulders, arms, elbows, wrists, forearms, hands, back of the hands. I want to feel the floor as much as I can. This is where I like to imagine I'm laying on a bed of sand and I'm trying to make the perfect imprint of my upper body on the sand. I don't want it to smear. I don't want it to move at all. From here, we're going to do some hip rotation. We're going to let both our hips rotate over to the left, and we're just seeing how far can we rotate the hips without smearing our sand. We're going to inhale as we come back to center, exhale as we rotate to the other side. Again, I want to keep this movement small because I want to make sure that we're not moving and smearing the sand. The upper body is the more important part of this movement. The hips are less important. So I'm only moving my hips as far as I can control my upper body. But as I get that good sense and control, we can start to go a little bit further with the hips, as long as we don't lose that connection to the sand. I don't want that shoulder lifting up. I don't want the arms sliding around at all. So if that means that this movement remains really, really small, then keep it small in order to maintain that perfect imprint in the sand. The more that you work on this, the better that control will be in the upper body, the more range of motion you will start to get in the hips. But it's important that, like, this is how we get it, is by really locking in to the upper body first. And as you're moving into it with that good control of the upper body, we can slowly start to squeeze a little bit more range to see if we can get a little bit further without going into pinch or pain. We'll then bring our feet back down to the floor. We're going to straighten both legs. And then we're going to bend one knee and put that foot flat to the floor. And we're going to move that foot out to about 45 degrees from the midline of the body. And this is just a little bit of a glute activation. I want to make sure that we have a good tripod nature of our foot, and the knee remains squarely over the heel. If that knee caves inward, it's going to pick the pinky toe up off the floor, and we will no longer have a tripod. If that knee turns out, it's going to pick the big toe off the floor, and we won't have that tripod. So the knee has to stay directly over the heel. And we're going to drive down through the knee into that foot and slowly scoop the tailbone up towards the ceiling. We're only working one side here. The opposite leg needs to be completely soft and relaxed. So as I'm driving through my opposite side, I do not want my left leg, my right knee is the one I'm pushing down through. I do not want to push through my left heel to lift my left hip off the ground. The left hip is on the floor. It should not be active at all. As we drive through this foot, scooping the pelvis, I want to feel a light stretch through the front of the hip, and then see if you feel that contraction through the glute. This movement is actually a simple movement, and a lot of people, when they're trying to do it, try to move too far. So make the movement small and really focus on, can you feel that scoop of the pelvis turn into a contraction of the glute? Inhale, we're letting it all back down. Exhale, navel comes to the spine as we scoop into it. Feel that stretch. Activate that contraction. If you can feel that contraction, then I want to scoop into it a little bit more and see if you can really maximize that contraction. Can you start to feel the glute burn just a little bit? And we're going to switch and do the same thing on the other side. So again, foot's flat to the floor, moving it out to about 45 degrees from the midline of the body. Driving down through that knee, scooping the tailbone up towards the ceiling, feeling that light stretch on the front of the hip. Can you feel that contraction in the glute? Opposite leg is completely soft and relaxed. Again, I don't want that hip lifting up, that opposite side. I don't want that opposite leg active at all. It needs to be completely relaxed. It's not uncommon to have for the body to just want to drive down, and it can be really hard to shut that leg off. So if you find that leg wants to be active, just come back, shake it out, relax it, and just focus on that other side. And it may take a little bit of practice in order to get this down. With each one, scooping into it a little bit further, feeling that maximum level of contraction in the glute. Inhale, bringing it back. Exhale, nice scoop. We're going to switch back to the other side. We're going to do the same movement, but now we're going to add a layer to it. So Foot's flat, bringing it out 45 degrees to the midline of the body. On the inhale, the hips down. On the exhale, we are scooping into it. I want to find that contraction of the glute first. Our opposite arm can come overhead so that it's kind of out of the way. Once we find that contraction of the glute, we're taking our hand and we're reaching across our body, reaching through the chest. Inhale, we're bringing it all the way back. Let the hip down to the floor. Exhale, scoop. Find that contraction of the glute, and then add the reach and rotation. I don't want the reach to take away our glute contraction. So we've got to maintain downward pressure through that floor, active scoop, and we're only reaching as far as we can reach where we maintain that glute contraction to the floor, which again can be really hard to do. Go and switch sides. Ground that foot, moving it out to 45 degrees. Inhale at the bottom, exhale, scooping up, opposite hands overhead, reaching across. Again, I don't want to reach so much that I lose my back foot. Back foot's got to stay driving down. I want to feel that glute contracted, stretch through the front as I'm reaching. I don't want this reach to lose any of that. If anything, I want to press even harder into my foot as I reach. Inhale, it all comes back. Exhale, find that glute, and then add your reach. This is, again, a great move. Notice the difference of how this movement feels on the right side compared to the left side. Real important thing to note is when you're driving through that hip, does one knee feel shakier than the other? Is it harder to find that contraction in the glute on one side compared to the other? Do you feel that it's harder to maintain your tripod foot? Those are all going to be indications of some imbalance in the glutes. And again, that's going to be something really important. And if you're experiencing that, then that's a great place to schedule consultation so we can figure out how to get those glutes to function again. All right. From the floor, we're going to come back and come back to our crocodile breath. So making two nice big C shapes with the hands. Thumbs are going into the low back. Index fingers are going into the front. Palms are pressing into the side body. Hands are below the rib cage and above the pelvic bone. I want to be in that nice meaty space of the abdominal wall. Exhale, we're drawing our navel into our spine, squeezing the hands in lightly. Inhale, we're feeling that abdominal wall blow up like a balloon, expanding into the thumbs, into the index fingers, and out through the side palms. As we inhale fully, then exhale fully, drawing that navel all the way into the spine. And with each inhale, see if you can expand that balloon a little bit bigger. With each exhale, see if you can express more and more of that air all the way out. And then fill that balloon even bigger. After 5 to 6 breaths, we'll let our hands come down to our side. I want to continue with that expansion of the balloon, but now we're going to bring it up into our ribs, into our chest. Inhale, feel that chest expand, similar to the abdominals, not just forward into the chest, but I want to feel that expansion into the upper back and out through the side of the ribs at the same time. Exhale, we're still drawing the navel into the spine. Inhale, filling up that balloon. On the next inhale, start to let that breath move up into the shoulders and into the neck. Same concept of expanding the balloon At this point, I just want to imagine we're breathing into tension, anywhere where you feel tightness and restriction. On the exhale, we can let that tension release into the floor. For the last few breaths, you can close your eyes and just have a final scan of the body, feeling from feet, hips, back, chest, upper back, neck, noticing any areas where there's still tension in the body, breathing into that tension, and then allowing that tension to release into the floor on the exhale. When you're ready, you can open your eyes, and slowly we'll go from lying on our back, coming up to a sit, making sure that we're not lightheaded and dizzy. We did a good amount of breath work, so I want to take our time.